It's Tuesday, June 13. In the headlines, the National Water Commission says scheduled water supply disruptions will continue despite increased rainfall. In business news, a private sector organization of Jamaica to launch first IPO for Project Star. Regionally, Guyana's pledge to end child labor. Internationally, Iran's president visits Venezuela. And in sports, Jamaican boxer inducted into Hall of Fame. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Effective 2 p.m. today, Tuesday, June 13, the westbound overpass bridge linking Hagley Park Road to Marcus Garvey Drive will be closed to vehicular traffic. The National Works Agency says in a release that the bridge is being closed for 26 hours. The section of the roadway is most frequently used by motorists intending to access the Portmore leg of Highway 2000 or Marcus Garvey Drive. It is expected to be reopened at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, June 14. NWA Communication Manager Stephen Shaw says the road closure is to facilitate remedial work to correct a draining issue on the eastern side of the bridge. During the period of closure, motorists are being advised to use an alternative route and to obey the posted warning signs and instructions of flag persons. The National Water Commission, NWC, says the recent rainfall is not enough to return to normal operations, so the scheduled water supply disruptions will continue. According to Acting Corporate and Public Relations Manager for the NWC, Delana Williams, the increased rainfall did result in increased inflows to some of its reservoirs, but the corporate area received less rain than other parts of the island. Speaking to RJR News, Mr. Williams explained that the Mona Reservoir, for instance, moved from 32% up to 47% of capacity, describing it as a steady but not a large jump in inflows. In 2016 alone, over 37,000 children were exposed to child labor in Jamaica. That data came from the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin's Youth Activity Survey. Child labor is illegal in Jamaica. Minister of Labor and Social Security Pernell Charles Jr. is calling on Jamaicans to join the fight against it. In his message for World Day Against Child Labor on Monday, June 12, the minister gave his commitment to lead the national drive towards this objective.
Children in Jamaica have been engaged in economic activity related to fisheries, small construction activities, nightclubs and bars, agriculture, dry goods peddling, and other informal commercial activities.
According to the Child Care and Protection Act, no child below the age of 13 years should be engaged in work for any economic gain. A child of 13 to 14 years of age who engages in light work may work a maximum of 4 hours per day and not exceeding 14 hours per week. The minimum age that a child can be admitted into formal employment is 15 years if he or she has completed secondary education.
This presents a clear and present danger, and it requires urgent public action as my ministry continues to lead programs at the community level to combat all forms of child labor. The highest risk of child labor has been identified in the parishes of Portland and St. Thomas, while Kingston and St. Andrew, Clarendon, Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, and St. Elizabeth present worrying trends.
Statin, in its recent child risk model, has identified that close to 54,000 children are at risk of child labor. The minister said that child work should not be confused with child labor.
It is important for parents and children to be aware of the distinction now between child labor and child work. When a parent gives a child a regular domestic activity, such as a chore or some learning experience, that is child work. And it's quite acceptable once it does not expose the child to hazards or prevent the child from their educational and social development.
You should know that persons who engage in child labor can be fined or imprisoned. The fines for regular child labor offenses should not exceed $500,000 or imprisonment of up to 6 months. Persons engaged in the worst forms of child labor, such as hazardous work, child prostitution, child pornography, and child trafficking, can be fined up to $1 million or 12 months imprisonment. Misinformation in the public can lead to hate, misunderstanding, violence, and other negative responses. The United Nations Chief Secretary General Antonio Guterres believes that the use of artificial intelligence, AI, in that sense could prove even more dangerous. Speaking at a virtual press brief on Monday, Mr. Guterres demanded global action.
Governments have sometimes resorted to drastic measures, including blanket internet shutdowns and bans, that lack any legal basis and infringe on human rights. And around the world, some tech companies have done far too little, too late, to prevent their platforms from contributing to violence and hatred. The recommendations in this brief seek to make the digital space safer and more inclusive, while vigorously protecting human rights.
He plans to consult widely on the just-released principles for the UN Code of Conduct for Information Integrity on Digital Platforms, which he will issue before next year's UN Summit of the Future.
The proposals in this policy brief in preparation for the Code of Conduct include a commitment by governments, tech companies and other stakeholders to refrain from using, supporting or amplifying disinformation and hate speech for any purpose, a pledge by governments to guarantee a free, viable, independent and plural media landscape with strong protection for journalists, the consistent application of policies and resources by digital platforms around the world to eliminate double standards that allow hate speech and disinformation to flourish in some language and countries, while they are prevented more effectively in others.
Artificial intelligence, or AI, is the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, especially computer systems. It is a wide-ranging tool that enables people to rethink how we integrate information, analyze data, and use the resulting insights to improve decision-making. At the same time, though, these developments raise important policy, regulatory, and ethical issues. For example, how should we promote data access? How do we guard against bias or unfair data used in algorithms? When we talk about mental health, we're not only talking about persons losing their mind or persons who suffer from a mental disability. All of us are susceptible to suffering mentally, so we have to take care of our minds. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps to determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. Throughout humankind, arts have had a positive influence on physical and mental health. At the 76th World Health Assembly, Renee Fleming, WHO's Goodwill Ambassador for Arts and Health, explains why this connection is not new.
The connection between arts and health isn't new. This has existed really since the beginning of mankind because we have been together as social entities, as groups, generally speaking, through the arts, through singing, vocalization, painting, theater. All of these things have united us, which is part of health. We now understand that we need this actually for mental health, which is something that we're really struggling with across the globe right now. But science looking at arts and health is something relatively new. It's through brain scanning, through the ability to do research that uncovers the biology of how we absorb the arts, how we appreciate it, what it does to us, but also how various therapies and creative arts therapies can improve our lives throughout the lifespan. There's no question that the pandemic unlocked the understanding that we are creative people, that we need to also engage with each other creatively. So when people were isolated and were lonesome and lonely, they started getting on balconies and performing. They started performing outside of loved one's window when they couldn't actually get into the hospital. So this mode of communication came back very quickly, and I think there was a tremendous aha moment for the public when they realized that, hey, there's really something important here. This is who we are.
Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
The private sector organization of Jamaica will launch its first initial public offering for the Social and Economic Transformation Initiative, Project STAR, on the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. The prospectus will become available this week at $1 with the intention to raise $100 million before the month end. The Project STAR shares will represent charity donations rather than tradable shares, which will prevent investors in the security from selling to each other on the exchange. For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Monday, June 12, the US dollar sold for an average of $155.20. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $116.08. The pound sterling traded for $195.51, and the euro sold for $167.06. In JSE trading, the JSE index advanced by 1,197 points. The junior market index declined by 3 points. The combined market index advanced by 1,083 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 325 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 116 stocks, of which 39 advanced, 63 declined, and 14 traded firm. Stocks advanced for Access Financial Services Limited, Berger Paints Jamaica Limited, and Caribbean Cement Company Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Variable Preference, and AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited. Trading firm were Everything Fresh Limited, G West Corporation Limited Ordinary Shares, and Iron Rock Insurance Company Limited. The overall volume leaders were Tropical Battery Company Limited with over 5 million units, Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with over 4 million units, and Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 2 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted 250 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Goddard Enterprises Limited was the sole security trading 5,000 shares. In regional business, in Barbados, local non-governmental organizations and the private sector have welcomed the approach from the government to reduce plastic pollution. Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry representative Andy Armstrong gave insight as to what some private sector agencies have been doing to reduce their plastic footprint.
We collected 39,374 pieces of litter and debris from our beaches, and of this amount, 27,769 were plastics. And some of our most common items were microplastics, which were 8,924 pieces, plastic bottle caps, which were 5,507 pieces, and plastic bottles, which amounted for 3,581 pieces.
We do Clean Up Barbados annually, and we go from inland gullies to coast. And just to tell you, in April, we cleared up. This is just littering, like illegal dumping in gullies, and obviously some beach waste which we're creating, but a lot of it's coming in through the ocean. But in 2023, we removed 46,000 pounds of waste from 26 sites, and we had 1,200 volunteers who made that happen. So since 2009, we've basically cleared up 350,000 pounds of illegal waste.
An interesting one, talking to the paint companies, and I never clicked in, but they said, you notice we've changed all our paint cans from plastic to metal. And that's because the metal cans, you can put them in the landfill and they will rust and degrade over time, whereas plastic wouldn't. We've also the Adopt a Kilometre, which cleans the sides of the road, but it's cutting the grass, but it's also picking up a lot of plastic, which finds its way back to recycling. The private sector also funds a lot of these cleanups. You know, we give financial support to a lot of agencies who do cleanups.
In international business, the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq closed at their highest levels on Monday since April 2022 as investors awaited inflation data and the Federal Reserve's interest rate decision this week.
The Dow added 0.6%, the S&P 500 rose more than 0.9%, and the Nasdaq closed up 1.5%. Lifted by gains in market heavyweights like Amazon and Tesla, the S&P 500 has now recovered over 20% from its October 2022 lows. Some investors say Wall Street is in the midst of a bull market. Main Street Research founder and chief investment officer James Demert disagrees.
U.S. markets and to some degree the overseas markets have had a nice rally over the last 2 months. In the shorter term, a lot of things are lining up that we're probably due for a normal pullback or correction. That's usually of the magnitude of 8 to 10%. It certainly would bring PE ratios down to a more reasonable level.
Demert said market volatility remains low, which has led to recent declines, and also cited a technical indicator, which shows the market is significantly overbought. Tuesday, the U.S. Labor Department's Consumer Price Index reading is expected to show inflation cooled slightly in May, with core prices likely remaining sticky. Tuesday is also the first day of the Fed's two-day meeting, with a decision on interest rates out Wednesday. Stocks making big moves included exchange operator Nasdaq, which plunged nearly 12% after agreeing to buy software company Adenza, which analysts called an expensive bet, and Broadcom, which jumped 6% after Reuters reported the chipmaker was set to gain conditional EU antitrust approval for its $61 billion proposed acquisition of cloud computing firm VMware.
In market data for oil prices rose on apparent bargain hunting, recovering some ground from the previous day's plunge. Brent crude futures climbed $1.47 to $73.31 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude was at $68.32, up $1.20. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Dedita Rodney.
In regional news, in Trinidad and Tobago, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley believes the region has made inroads with the United States to assist in fighting crime and stem the flow of illegal guns. Sunil Lala reports.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said the United States has revealed several plans to assist the region in the fight against crime during the recent high-level meeting with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris in the Bahamas. This includes a firearms coordinator to monitor and act on firearms prosecutions.
And it really has to deal with making a greater effort against firearms traffickers and what you call straw purchases. People who buy firearms under dubious arrangements, meaning to trade with them for illicit purposes.
He said the U.S. has also agreed to bolster the region's forensic capabilities.
So the Department of State is now going to be working with us for this regional forensic accreditation, and the United States is going to help the Caribbean with forensic capabilities to bring our systems, not just Trinidad and Tobago, but all the others, up to international standards.
Dr. Rowley also added that the U.S. has agreed to replace 2 aircraft used in TNT and the region for Border Patrol and Search and Rescue.
Our Air Guard has 2 very old aircraft that we had become very concerned about. These are very expensive specialist aircraft, and we've been asking the United States to help us to replace those aircraft.
The Prime Minister is confident these and other plans will help to push back against criminal elements.
All of these are us as governments, including the United States government, putting our agencies to work to put pressure on the supply of illicit items into our territories.
Dr. Rowley said CARICOM Moving as One continues to get the attention of the U.S. and praised initiatives such as the recent crime symposium hosted by TNT. Sonolala, TTT News.
In Guyana, Minister of Labour Joseph Hamilton says the government's pursuit of social justice for all will prevent, reduce and ultimately eradicate child labour in all its forms.
Guyana has implemented several measures to mitigate the risk factors of child labour. Minister of Labour Joseph Hamilton made the assertion as the world observes World Day Against Child Labour on June 12 under the theme Social Justice for All and Child Labour.
Together with our inclusive and well-performing education system, we have a good social protection system which covers many social benefits, including foster care and adoption and public assistance benefits. There is in place an adequate legislative framework to effectively deal with the issue of child labor.
The Labour Minister emphasized the importance of the conversation between social partners to end child labour, which is a crucial aspect of the fundamental principles and rights at work. Government will continue to raise awareness on the issue of child labour and the detrimental emotional and physical effects that children forced into labour can experience.
I would like to encourage and promote regular dialogue on this issue and coordinated, cohesive, and coherent actions among the social partners for the elimination of all forms of child labor. I wish to remind employers that they have a responsibility to prevent and eliminate this scourge in society and to ensure that the necessary due diligence in their business processes and supply chain is done to discourage the involvement of child labor in the business ecosystem.
The International Labour Organization ILO estimates that 160 million children are working as minors worldwide, or around 1 in 10 of all children.
This is indeed troubling. Therefore, conscious efforts must be taken to ensure that policies and program initiatives are germane and effective so that the commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goal 8, Target 7, to end child labor in all of its forms by 2025 is realized.
This year, awareness walks will be held in Regions 4, 5, and 6, and visits will be made to 25 secondary schools across Guyana to interact with the students on the issue of child labor.
In the Bahamas, the mandatory use of customs-exempt app began on Monday. This means travelers will no longer have to fill out a printed form when clearing customs. While it is expected to be a quick and easy declaration process, customs officials are advising residents the examination of those forms remains.
We will still be examining to ensure that what is declared is what is in your possession at that particular time. So the examination portion of it is still there. It's just that now you don't have to worry about someone second guessing and giving you the incorrect rate. The system, the rates are there. Everything is straight across the board. You know exactly what is being calculated. You know exactly what it is that you have to pay. So you don't have any human interference as it relates to that.
The Customs Department says all of the necessary forms will be available on the app. Instructional videos can be accessed now on its website. That's bahamascustoms.gov.bs. Again, that's bahamascustoms.gov.bs. And if you're without a smartphone, officials say kiosks will be available.
You could search your duty rates. If you're not sure of a particular item, you can just search for the item and it's there. We also have a very help-friendly help desk in the app, built into the app. So if there's an item you do not see, you can just go to our help desk, ask for the item, and once it's within a reasonable time within the day, we'll be able to add it for you.
In news on the international scene, in his first visit to Latin America, Iran's president on Monday met with his Venezuelan counterpart and declared both countries have common interests. President Ibrahim Raisi's visit to Venezuela came a year and a day after President Nicolas Maduro visited him in Iran.
We can now speak to Abbas Aslani, who's a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. He's in Tehran, joining us from there. Welcome to Al Jazeera. So what we've heard so far is that a number of accords have been signed between the two presidents. How significant do you think this visit is?
Well, Iran and Venezuela, they have had relations for long years, but, it has been criticized here in the capital that the previous government didn't pay much attention to these bilateral relations. And that's why for about a couple of years ago, the level of volume of the trade decreased to the, some $100 million. But in the past couple of years, they have tried to increase it to the $3 billion, and they aim to increase it by as much as $20 billion. But at the initial step, it will be about $10 billion. So the current Iranian administration, which has been focusing on, let's say, having a good relations with neighboring countries, Asian countries, as well as those friendly countries, is also trying to revive the capacity that it can find in the relations with some Latin American countries, including Venezuela.
Right. So let me ask you, why now? What do we make of the timing of that then?
In the aftermath of the, disappointment of about the revival of the nuclear deal, Iran has been trying to resort to some alternatives in order to compensate, the shortages in its economic relations. So when Tehran cannot have good economic relations with the West, for sure it will, shift toward Eastern countries, as well as those countries who want to have good relations with Iran.
In sports, Jamaican boxer Alicia Ashley has been inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Ashley, popularly known as Slick, is a former IWBF featherweight, WIBF and IFBA Super Bantamweight and WBC Super Bantamweight champion. In 2015, she made history when she became the oldest woman to win a title at 48. Ashley was born in Kingston and attended Seaward All-Age School. She grew up along Maxfield Avenue, then moved to Rockford for some 4 years before migrating to the United States at age 11. In cricket news, the Women's Caribbean Premier League is set to bowl off its second edition on July 31, and once again, the Massey Group will be the league's title sponsor. That partnership was cemented on Monday with the official announcement at the Queen's Park Oval, and West Indies bowler Karishma Ramharak voiced the appreciation of the region's top players.
The CPL brand has grown tremendously over the years, and it's definitely an honor to be associated with it. Massey has done us ladies proud by partnering to help make Women's CPL happen again, as we couldn't wait to have our own version of CPL. For the present group of girls, I can exaggerate how grateful we are. And for the younger generations to come, this step has been and will continuously help to create life-changing opportunities for each one of us. The exposure and experience that was gained last year, I'm sure a lot of girls will be eager and happy to participate in this tournament and give their all once again. As the tagline goes, it is the biggest party in sport, and we definitely enjoy being a part of it.
And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thank you so much for watching.